Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and back together again.
Yes.
Assistant Chief of Operations John Feddema. John, how are you?
Good. I missed you last week.
Yeah, I don't think you did. Well, I think you did because you ended up having to do the podcast.
I did this.
I think Todd Abel missed me because he was forced to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Although we got to talk about wildland, and
that's always a good topic, yeah.
Yeah, he likes that. So, no, that was good. Thank you for doing that.
You bet.
I was out of town, in town, out of town again. It's what happens when you're running legislation. So I thought we'd touch a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, you and I talked some about behavioral health. You kind of gave an update regarding your last trip to Mighty Oaks.
Oh, yeah.
Facilitating a program there. But we have within our own organization today, we've hired a trauma counseling firm on retainer to provide services and guidance to our personnel. So, and by services, I mean help us run the peer support team, help us train the peer support team, help us train our other officers, and then be there when something happens, whether it's a critical incident or it's one of our own personnel who's in crisis and needs help.
Exactly that. When you and Patty worked a lot to help bridge this gap to bring in the group start moving on. Debbie Ritterbush and a lot of the counselors she has in there made that contract, and I think we're just now starting to unpack all that they're going to be able to do for us. I mean, I know we had some ideas of our hope of what they're going to do, and I think they're only expanding upon that. So even this morning we met with a group of our peer support team members, along with Debbie and her team, to kind of figure out how we move forward.
Okay.
You look at the trauma that we deal with, you say, the peer counseling, the CISDs, the diffusings. There's so many different aspects that they're coming in as professionals that know how to deal with this stuff, and they're providing guidance. And at the same time, you mentioned just also providing that avenue for personnel and their families to get one-on-one counseling if that is what is determined that they need or want. So there's going to be a lot, I think, of, I don't want to say even changes, but a lot of how that program evolves to look at the final result. Ultimately, the mental health and wellness of our personnel is very important to us. We want to be able to help that, but you and I are not professionals in that area.
We are not. We can cause more mental health issues, but we can't fix them.
That's true.
But we can guide people to the right place, and I think that's part of the goal is to ensure those resources exist. And they exist 24/7 for us now.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So you've set up, you kind of established how we would start introducing this to the organization. Can you talk about some of the things that you did, like with the battalion chiefs and ride-alongs for counselors? Okay.
And I would say that's not me by any means.
Okay.
Like I say, it's been the whole group that has put together. The battalion chiefs have helped navigate this, and along with Debbie coming in and kind of providing the guidance of what they want to do. They want to learn the culture of the organization.
Right.
They want to learn the culture even more of the fire service. So, at the very beginning, they've looked at a number of things. We mentioned, they have CISDs, we have the defusings of critical incidents, but there's so much more to that. Our personnel, that are struggling just maybe with something at home or, the cumulative trauma that we see, how do they get help as well? So part of what we have done, what has been done with the program, is making sure that there's an avenue for a captain or a battalion chief to call and get professional help from them to say, hey, here is what we're seeing in the employee themselves. They're struggling with this. They're sharing this. We want to know what do we need to do as a next step, where Debbie and her team come in as a professional to say, hey, this could be done at a station. Let's say it happens within the 24 hours. Somebody is struggling with something. We can help navigate that with the professionals. Say, hey, let's bring them in, whether they come on site, whether it's just a phone call. It's all helping navigate what does the individual need.
And we did have the battalion chiefs. I think they went to her office, right, individually. Yep. That was not an evaluation.
Yeah.
For those who were nervous, it was not an evaluation. They went there as an orientation.
Yeah.
What can this program provide for you as a battalion chief when something happens on your shift.
Yep.
And I think you said the next step, once the battalion chiefs are all through, is to have all of our acting battalion chiefs go through as well.
Yes. Again, it's just exposure at that point on what that system can look like. And I think that's the benefit of having the professionals come in and say, hey, here's what we think. Like, perfect, that sounds good. We want to do that. And the first group that's going through is the battalion chiefs. And they've gone in there and sat in there with Debbie to kind of see what she has to offer within her office. At the same time, she has helped kind of give the guidance on, hey, here's what we're looking at that is a resource to you. Mm-hmm. Even this morning with the peer support team, they discussed phone numbers. There's a dedicated link on the Start Moving On, Debbie's website.
Okay.
So if you go on that website, there's a link that basically goes to CAFMA and a bunch of resources.
That's amazing.
They're still, kind of updating it and putting information in there, but there's going to be one specific location for CAFMA personnel to go to see, a lot of information on there. So that's a big part of this, project. And then once we get the battalion chief through, the goal is just to keep exposing people to what they have to offer and how that partnership looks.
And we probably need to expand that further because it's ops sees more of the trauma that we deal with, but there's a scanner in the front office for our admin folks who listen to it, and Jonah and his folks listen to the radio. Our fire prevention folks, when they go on a fire scene to investigate, and it's a fatal fire scene or somebody seriously injured, it can impact them as well. So we do need to talk with Chief Tharp and with Chief Rose about getting their managers through, talking with Debbie as well. Again,
absolutely.
We're not sending you for an evaluation. What we want you to do is get comfortable, or at least be familiar with the people with the counseling group that we're working with, and know how to access them.
Yes, and like I say, Debbie and I actually talked about it a little bit this morning on that exact topic. How do we bridge beyond operations? Obviously, that sometimes is the focus because of that trauma, but at the same time, this is the whole intent is to try to make a healthier organization.
Right. You
look at years ago when they put together the Everybody Goes Home. Obviously, there's a big component to that is everybody's able to return the next day to their shift. It's not just going home. Not that hey, you survived 24 hours, you can go home, and that's success. Yeah. We don't want to measure success on that anymore. We want to measure success on that way that people will come back the next day to keep going to work, to continue on all the way through a career and all the way through a tour. And that secondary part of it now I think is a focus on the mental health and wellness.
Sure.
We were looking at, the safety of a scene, that everybody goes home and we want to be safe and, and manage that scene well. The second part is that mental health and wellness, to where you're able to walk away, go home, and manage everything that you dealt with that 24 hours and come back in a good way.
Right.
So,
well, and when you talk about that, I get an image in my head of a person made up of thousands or millions of little tiny puzzle pieces, and you're at work today and you see this thing on this call, or we don't want to get into that, but you see things on a call, and each time you see that, you go home, but there's a little piece of you that's left behind, and maybe replaced with that scene, that piece of that scene, and recurring. And so we want everyone to go home, but we want you to go home whole. Yeah. And part of that is being able to keep all of those pieces in place and take those new pieces that you have, those things that you've seen, and put them where they belong.
Yeah.
So you're better able to deal with them.
Exactly. And I think Debbie did a great job this morning, kind of just working with the peer support team, who was obviously kind of that internal frontline group who is helping navigate those difficult incidents on the front end, on what resources are available. And so Debbie did a great job on the training side of it, even providing some of the things that our brain does to try to help protect us, but ultimately leads to some of our own challenges. And there are ways to navigate that. And our office does a great job helping navigate some things that our brain does in an effort to protect us, but it only causes some challenges down the road.
Yes.
So it was interesting to hear, obviously much smarter than I could try to be, but it was interesting to listen to it.
So someone who is actually trained in that field as opposed to us.
Yes.
the way my brain works, it just goes blank.
Yes, mine doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you look at, even my involvement in the Mighty Oaks, I know we've talked about that a little bit.
Right.
When I go there, I'm not a counselor. When I go there, and even part of the little small group that I'm with, it's about trying to draw out information that we've already talked about in the main group.
Right.
And so you do a lesson or a session on a topic. You go out. My job is to ask questions. I'm not a counselor, and so
right.
nor am I trained to be. But they provide enough training for me, even in that moment, to ask questions, draw people out, and then my job is to then direct back to the training that they've gotten, back to the information that has been shared, direct them back to a future, lesson that we may be going over. But really, just trying to get people to open up and to process things.
Right.
That's my job. One of the parts they talk about is pulling threads. So that if you see a thread where somebody gives you just a little bit, my job is to then see that and pull it a little bit to try to unravel it.
Right.
And that's been a fun part of being a part of the program. On the leadership side of it is trying to find those threads to help people unpack what they are dealing with. One of the first lessons they talk about when we get to the Mighty Oaks is everybody has that rucksack of life that they've packed things in. You don't ever unpack it anywhere. And so if you're not going to unpack it within this group, where are you going to do that? And so they encourage them throughout the week, empty out that rucksack that has only weighing you down and lay it out on the table and leave it there.
And you're doing it in a safe environment.
Absolutely.
Now, I know, in speaking with Debbie, she's familiar with the Mighty Oaks. She's supportive of that program. So how does the Mighty Oaks kind of dovetail with what we're doing with Debbie and her group, in your opinion?
Sure. We were talking about even this morning, her and I, in regards to, she sees it as a partnership, even with the Mighty Oaks, even though they don't have any, communication. She will send folks there, and recommend that they go there. And she's also, helped people who have gone and come back and are still, navigating. There's no perfect solution.
Sure.
Even when
Absolutely.
folks leave the Mighty Oaks, sometimes they feel like, oh, I'm good. But sometimes you're going back into a fight.
Right.
And it's still a fight. And so she helps them on the backside sometimes help navigate that fight. And at the same time, she'll send folks there as a way to prompt just kind of taking that next step on whatever that may be in their own journey. So I would say it's a partnership. And listening to her, she's seen people on both avenues, helped guide people to that program as well as other programs. It's certainly not the only program out there, but she is well aware of it. And I think she is well aware of the benefit it has to first responders just because of the nature of its design. But there's also some challenges with it. So
yeah. Well, in the Mighty Oaks, as you've talked about before, it's a week-long program. It's really a gut check.
Yeah.
Unpack the rucksack, as you said. There are other programs like the Center for Excellence in Maryland, and I think they're opening one in California as well.
That's Ben mentioned that this morning.
That's the longer term.
Yes.
Place where you stay for maybe a month or however long it is.
Sure.
I think the important thing for people to remember, whether you're going to Mighty Oaks or you're going into the center or you're going for counseling with Debbie, is that you don't get fixed.
Sure.
It's not fixed. You learn how to deal with the trauma that you have, the issues that you have to just live with day to day.
And I think a lot of the language she used even today is process it. Like
There you go.
You're not going to get rid of it. It's not like you can unremember it at this point. You can't forget it, but you can process it and do it in a healthy manner, which I think that's what her team does. They do different programs. EMDR is one of those that they do there, and she kind of highlighted that this morning with the peer team on what that looks like. And really, it's about processing, so that you can do it in a healthy way to move on. And I think that's the name of her center is Start Moving On.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to look at it, is what they're providing is that initial step to help move on, whatever it is. Because you can go there with, hey, I'm challenged with this call. And I heard the analogy one time of, if you take two really any stringed instruments, but you take two pianos and sit them next to each other, and you press the key on one piano, it's going to vibrate the string. Well, that is going to cause the string in the other piano to vibrate ever so slightly, and it's called sympathetic resonation or sympathetic response.
Okay.
All it is that vibration of that frequency. You press the one, it's going to cause that other one to vibrate ever so slightly. Our heart's no different. You can go on any type of call. You don't always get to choose what one is going to cause you to vibrate ever so slightly. And you do that over the course of a career, maybe stuff that you have not processed. So her group and the whole concept is to process that, to move on, to figure out how to, whatever that trauma is, whatever, personal, professional, it doesn't matter. It's the ability to process it and take that next step.
Yeah. And I think culturally, our organization has moved to a place where it's more acceptable to say, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And to sit down and talk to someone, whether it's a trauma counselor or it's a peer that you feel comfortable with, or a friend or a family member, whatever it is, just that you have someone to talk with. Yep. And, you had Captain Dennis Brown on here a while back, and he talked about dealing with adversity.
Yeah.
And he has just a fantastic story about where he was and where he is today. And I was out at 61 yesterday. He happened to be there, and the topic of behavioral health came up. And the feedback from the group was, we really appreciate what CAFMA is putting together. We wish these things had been here before, but there's also an acceptance level from people in the field to say, hey, this is where we want to go now. And we're seeing that more. But I couldn't help but think back to Dennis talking about that adversity, and it seemed like one of the triggers for him was the death of his infant daughter.
Sure.
And it just struck me that had the organization had programs like this back then, and had they been more accepted back then, would that have helped change the course a little bit, where there's slightly less adversity that he had to go through over a period of years?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm obviously, when he was on here and sharing about Delaney, I mean, you couldn't see it in the video, but obviously still very much, at the heart. And I don't think you're going to lose that.
No, not at all.
And but again, it's how do you navigate through some of that stuff? And hopefully the programs that are being developed, like anything else, all in good timing. And I think hopefully that there's a acceptance across the board. I know obviously from the senior staff side of it, we want to encourage these programs.
Yes.
Really from the standpoint of we want healthy people doing a good job that are able to live a good life. I think that's when we discussed this. I mean, we want good things for our folks.
Absolutely,
and hopefully that is rolling out. I know sometimes that may not be a belief out there, but hopefully we are demonstrating that, at least in this one particular avenue, that we want healthy employees to the best of our ability.
Sure.
And even when talking with Debbie this morning, that's kind of the discussion that we had. As she looks at our culture, as she looks at what we're doing, I asked her to please continue to kind of challenge us on how we move forward. What is she seeing? What does she recommend? Even in the peer support team, what does that look like? How does her leadership coming into that team as a professional help navigate what our future diffusings look like, future critical incident debriefings, all that? We want that input because we want to do the right thing, in those moments.
Well, and there's some other stuff that we have coming up that Debbie's going to be involved in. One of them is the Partners Academy coming up in a week or two here in April. Yep. On the weekend, and
April 9th.
April 9th, that academy is where we invite the significant others of our personnel to come in. We talk about fire department culture. We talk about your benefits, healthcare, those types of things. But we also delve into the other part of this career or this profession, which is cancer prevention.
Yeah.
Behavioral health is a big one because your significant other spends more time with you than any of us do. Yeah. And if they understand what to look for, then maybe we'll pick up on somebody having an issue earlier before it becomes a crisis. but they have to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
They have to feel like they're part of the organization because they are, and they have to feel like they have access.
Yeah.
And so that's why that's important. And then, so April 9th is the Partners Academy, and then after that, you've set something up. Can you share that with us, dates, times, and what that looks like?
So, after the 9th, on April 13th and 14th, we're doing a Resiliency Dinner. And that's actually Kevin Schroeder and his wife Rachel are coming out from Texas. I met Kevin for the first time in the Mighty Oaks. He's usually the overall leader for the week when we go to a program. And he just provides the guidance throughout the week, provides training, and he also does some different teaching. And so I enjoy his stories when he talks, and just the adversity, even a lot of it in his personal life, and how him and his wife have worked through that and where they're at now. I don't exactly know what he's sharing. We talked about it a little bit, but I'm looking forward to whatever he's. And I told him, I said, hey, whatever you provide, hopefully is exactly what the folks who attend need. And so he's going to come, share a few things, and it'll be fun to hear his wife's side of it, because I've only heard his side of it. So it'll be fun to hear her side as well. And then Jeremy Martin with PVPD is supposed to be getting dinner for us, so I'll keep keep pressing on him. But we're trying to, partner with a number of agencies to. It's not just for us. Obviously, we want our employees coming. We have a few folks signed up, but a situation like this, we're just opening it to anybody. And obviously, we want the spouses coming in as well. Go back to, like you say, sometimes the challenges for our spouses. Becky and I have talked about this a couple times. She reminds me of things that have bothered me in the past that I've processed, and it's interesting that she still remembers some of that stuff. Like, oh, I remember how this call bothered you, or this call bothered you, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember that call, but obviously I processed it. She still bears a little bit of that, burden that I shared with her. So our families are in this together, and you're not going to go through a career unscathed by the trauma that we are trained to help mitigate and navigate. So you're in it together at that point. So hopefully through these different events, Partners Academy, the Resiliency Dinner, we can start to hopefully give tools on both sides on how to work through this.
And by sending our managers through, battalion chiefs, managers like Jonah and others, to sit and talk to her for orientation, but then when that's done, bring her in and do a supervisors meeting and have her talk to all the supervisors, so that everyone is getting some access and idea of what the program is, what we're trying to do. We'll share about this at the Partners Academy, what we're doing with it. We will share at the dinner what we're doing with Debbie. It'd be great if Debbie could come to one of the dinners. I know
she's coming, I think, to the 14th.
Oh, excellent.
And another one of our counselors, Carissa, I think her and her husband are coming. And actually, I think the office manager, Kenny, is coming. So they're going to be there. And again, just good exposure. She can kind of see what we're doing in different avenues. I
think we should also look at setting up a mini Fire Ops 101 for her and her staff. Yeah. They're doing the ride-alongs, they're doing all that, but let's put them in gear.
There you go.
And let them cut up a car and go into a smoke-filled building. So when we do Fire Ops 101 and we bring people in from the community to participate, and they actually do some of what we do, it makes a big difference.
Sure.
I mean, we've had some elected officials that came in, and when they left, they're like, I have a completely different perspective of your profession and what you all do. Which is amazing. So I think that would be a good thing for her to come in. I know that myself and the Prescott Fire Chief will be here on April 9th to talk to to introduce the different fire departments to the group, because we do invite for the Partners Academy, we do invite Prescott significant others to attend. And Patty has worked with Human Resources at Prescott, so they're going to have somebody come over. So when we talk about the different benefits, the groups can kind of break apart for that, talk about their specific, and then come back together for the rest of it. I know I plan to stop by on the 13th and the 14th, both. Perfect. I'm going to try to get Jen to come with me to one or two of those. Sure. I'm certain, I've talked to the Prescott Chief. I think he's coming to those as well. Cool. And hopefully that will draw more of our folks to come in and take part and the Resiliency Dinner, because I think it's important. And when we collectively, when staff shows up to things, generally it just demonstrates a commitment.
Sure,
is
and
what it does.
hopefully it's, again, pulling that stigma away from it, that there's something negative even from our viewpoint.
Right.
If someone decides, hey, I need some counseling, and more power to you.
Yeah.
And go do it. There's nothing that should hold you back from a viewpoint like, well, what if they find out?
Right.
More power to you. I've enjoyed even sitting down with Debbie and some of the discussions, with what we want the program, and we end up the discussion sometimes gets off track, and we end up going down different paths. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed even those conversations, and that's part of what you can do even in counseling is just figure out how to process whatever struggle it is, and even the mighty oaks. What you see sometimes they come in struggling with is not what they unpack, is not what ultimately comes out of the bottom of that rucksack when you finally are tapping the backside and the final stuff falls out. Sometimes it's not the stuff that they thought coming in.
And it's amazing what can trigger memories of calls.
Oh, yeah.
I know I was thinking this morning, my back was killing me, and I was thinking back to my uncle having some lidocaine patches that they had put on his back to help with pain, which led me to a call where a gentleman had overdosed on his mom's morphine patches by using the syringe, which led me to another call and another call. Just this morning thinking about that, and it wasn't a traumatic thing to think about. It was like, wow, I remember those calls, and I remember thinking to myself, why does God make the decisions he does sometimes where a guy who's extracting morphine from his mom's cancer pain patches, we save him, and some young father of 3 doesn't make it. One of those things that back then, earlier in my career, I thought about a lot and hadn't thought about that in forever.
Yeah. And like you say, you see that as part of the challenge is why do the things happen?
Right.
And that comes down to not even something we can explain through training and, just our experience. There is a spiritual component to it.
Sure.
And it's not talking just about God or faith, but there is a spiritual challenge sometimes that is related to the trauma that we see. And again, that's just where these programs, the counseling, can help navigate through some of that stuff. And it's a good thing to go out there and seek help. We in the fire service, you have a lot of the helpers, even in the first responders, the police force. What we're trying to do is figure out who's helping the helpers. And I think that's what this program is kind of designed to bolster in partnering with Debbie and doing that exact thing.
Well, and we're sharing the information for the program we put together with others, with Jeremy, with Prescott Valley PD, with the new Prescott Fire Chief, because we know that their organizations are looking at something similar at some point, and they want to see how this works. So the more we can work together with them, not to mention the fact that we're on the calls together.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's important to have that connection between law enforcement and fire and paramedics and EMTs that are in even with AMR, the private company up here.
For sure.
So a lot of great things. We'll close it out with this. I'll tell you that normally when I think of that guy with the morphine, what I think of is the fact that I was a new medic firefighter, and I went to intubate him, and I was shooting for the air bubbles and missed. And so as vomit started coming up the tube, I ducked out of the way and shot my captain with vomit. And
situational awareness.
It was, I mean, I didn't get hit.
Yeah.
But I did feel kind of bad about shooting the captain. I should have pointed the tube somewhere else. Yeah. So.
You never know.
Yeah, things happen. That's part of the fun of this profession is that, man, we have some great memories that we create.
Yes.
We have some really tough ones and we have some great ones. And if we can process the really tough ones, then we're going to retire with some really great memories and a healthy direction in life.
Yep.
So, John, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us this week.
Always glad to be here.
Yep. And remember, for all of you out there, we do have these resources available. We encourage you to use them. This is something that culturally we want to see in our organization. Yeah. So till next week, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. If we get to 1,000 subscribers, then we can do something where we can put links to things in the video, which we can't do now. But since not many people watch this, I'm not sure when we'll hit 1,000, but someday.
It's a good goal.
It is.
And cut.